I want this.
If you collect action figures and you leave them in the boxes, you collect boxes. If it wasn't for Star Trek in the first place, I may not even be alive right now.
I'd actually describe myself as pretty normal. I'm what you might call a closet Trekkie, with the exception of the fact that I've got 6 Star Trek uniforms in my closet.
Practically every aspect of my life is somehow involved with Star Trek.
It's not just a TV show.
It's what I do for fun, it's what I do for work.
It's life. It's the future.
Hi, I'm Roy Jackson from Alexandria, Indiana, and I've always been a big Star Trek fan. In fact, I was recently promoted to Admiral and made Deputy Fleet Commander of Starfleet Command, the oldest Star Trek fan club in the world.
A lot of people look at Star Trek fans like me and think, my God, he's obsessed.
Jonathan is the ultimate Star Trek fan.
I'm 40 years old, and I've been watching Star Trek for as long as I can remember.
Jonathan can act like a normal person when he wants to, but there's always that little bit of Trekkie in him.
My name is Jonathan Lane, and I live in Los Angeles, California. As a viewer of Star Trek, I've boldly gone where no fan has gone before. I'm a professional Trekkie.
Star Trek Next Generation first aired in 1987 and ran for a full 7 seasons.
The main characters of Star Trek The Next Generation were Captain Jean-Luc Picard, a Frenchman with a British accent and a very strong commanding officer. His first officer was William T. Riker.
Ladies' man, action, adventure kind of guy.
Commander Data was the second officer. And
always searching for his humanity. The Borg were the ultimate bad guys. They were part machine, part human. They did not allow for individuality. You had to be part of the collective.
Star Trek The Next Generation took place 75 years after the original series with Kirk and Spock. It re-established the Federation with some different rules. For example, the Klingons, who had previously been our enemies, were now our allies. In fact, there was even a Klingon on the bridge of the USS Enterprise.
Infinite diversity and infinite combinations to accept others for what they are.
It was Starfleet at its best. It was Gene Roddenberry's dream realized.
I'm 48, and in Star Trek the original series came out 41 years ago. So I was around 7 when it started. It was kind of like a Western set in space where they'd go in with guns blazing, and that would draw the interest of a 7-year-old a lot more than it would someone in their 30s. And then when Next Generation came out, it was more cerebral, and I was older and could appreciate that. So it's almost like Star Trek changed with my generation. I was just getting ready to go back to college, so here I am back in school. Star Trek's on. It's almost like reliving your childhood, the happy parts. This is kind of my Star Trek room. My wife won't let me keep it around the rest of the house, so I have all my plate collection in here. Most of the episode plates or the Power of Command plates, they do composites, which is what I always try to get my students to do as an art teacher. So I want them to create a composition, with various items and, create a whole balanced image. And the nice thing about the plates is they have to work in a radial composition. So you can't just, use a rectangle and fill it in and say, look, it's a composition. There's a lot more to it when you're working in a circular composition. This one has the Borg Queen along with Jean-Luc Picard as Locutus of Borg. Can you see that okay? And over here is Data, where he was becoming part human thanks to her. So this one I like a lot, and it's got really good detail. I have 2 porcelain dolls because, like I said, they're kind of like art. Somebody had to sculpt them and make the originals and stuff. I don't want him to get too dirty. I'm trying to figure out how to move his hands, but they did a really good job on that. The neat thing about this book is that it's a pop-up book. These are the trophies that we won as a Star Trek fan club in the Midnight Parade in Anderson. I'm currently the acting fleet commander of Starfleet Command Quadrant 1, which covers North America completely. My collection represents a lot of things to me. One, it represents art because they're all paintings that are reproduced on plates. And every plate has meaning to me because I've seen the episode that it represents, or I know the character that it represents. My favorite row is my Next Generation. And I'm still missing 2 plates from the series. I still don't have the Guinan or the Q. I got my first plate probably 10 years ago, or maybe 15. And I was at a flea market in Florida. And my wife said, look, a Star Trek plate. I had to have it.
He gets most of his plates from eBay. And when I dust them, he's like, you know, that's worth $300. It's like, okay, here, you dust it.
Wesley Crusher, probably one of the smallest parts of the series. And he was a lot harder to get than a Picard or a Riker or a Beverly Crusher. And then you figure Guinan and Q were around even less. And those are the hardest to get. Those run between $200 and $500 a piece. So my total plate collection, including the ones that are not on display, is probably worth in the neighborhood of $10,000. Here is a very old original piece. This was a toy put out in the late 60s, early 70s. Has to open really far. My grandkids love to play with this. And it gives the illusion of them being transported. If you collect action figures and you leave them in the boxes, you collect boxes. I get all the toys out and I let the grandkids play with all of them. Shannon had initially asked if I'd show how to make a Klingon goblet. He said I wanted to give something to society, and I felt that being a teacher would do that. Okay, this part you all know. You start throwing your cylinder. The high school I teach at is an urban high school. So we do get a lot of inner city kids, and they talk about how hard it is, but I noticed they're wearing like $120 tennis shoes.
Mr. Jackson is a cool teacher. Bit creepy with Star Trek. That's like his life. So that kind of creeps me out.
I have a lot of conversations with my students about Star Trek, and a lot of them don't get it. And I try to explain to them that it's basically about a hope for mankind. It's about the future. It's about doing good for other people that will come back to you. If you help people, then society improves, and you get to live in a better society. All I did is I line my fingers up along the bottom, and let it ride.
He is more than a fan. If he was on the Star Trek Enterprise, I don't think they would wreck or do anything because he would know what to do. He knows that much about it.
I love teaching. I love dealing with young minds and trying to persuade them to make life better, for the future.
I was probably about 2 or 3 years old, and my dad was watching an episode of Star Trek. And I remember climbing onto the bed with him and just sitting and watching the show, not really knowing what it was, but it was colorful and it was fun, and I guess that's where it all started.
We met online, and when one of the very first times that we ever wrote, I asked him why his email address had the word Captain John in it. And I thought that he was into sailing. And he explained to me that he was, I think it was a fleet captain in the USS Angelus. And I guess that should have been my tip-off right away from the beginning, that he was really into Star Trek.
So when Wendy and I decided to get married, obviously we weren't going to have a wedding on the bridge of the USS Enterprise. That was out of the question. But she still wanted something of Star Trek in our wedding because it's such a big part of my life.
Now, if I can get this part right, Jonathan, live long and prosper.
I'd say the highlight of our wedding was the groom's cake. We had a bride's cake and a groom's cake, and the groom's cake was covered with Star Trek stuff. Starships and alien languages and logos and insignias, and it was just a real hit.
I just remember this giant cake that everybody looked at and nobody even noticed that there was a bride's cake.
I've always expressed my Star Trek fandom very creatively. I design web graphics for Star Trek sites. I wrote that book about all the histories of the various starships. There's a lot of creativity in me that just loves to come out and uses Star Trek as an outlet.
To love Jonathan is to love Jonathan's love of Star Trek. I mean, you can't separate the two of them.
Wendy and I just moved into the house a few months ago, so a lot of the stuff is still packed up. I've been collecting Star Trek memorabilia since the early 1970s. I started out with the blueprints and the technical manual. The original Franz Joseph Star Trek Enterprise blueprints. This was included a cutaway of all the decks of the USS Enterprise, and I just memorized this. I would look and say, okay, if I wanted to go to the bathroom and I was here, where would I have to go? And okay, so this is the shuttlecraft. Oh, look, here's the ship's bowling alley. As Star Trek evolved and there was more stuff, I got a lot of background book materials. This is the Star Trek Concordance, and as you can see, held together by Scotch tape. This was the original Star Trek Bible from the 1970s. This is one of the prides of my collection. This is actually a glass that was used on the set of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I was there on the very last day of filming. They were striking the sets, and this was one of those pieces of Star Trek history that I was able to save from being thrown out. And the pride of my collection, Starship Spotter. I'm actually a published author. And they brought me in at the last minute because the author who was supposed to write this pulled out with literally 3 weeks left. I had 18 days to write articles on 30 different starships. So this is something I can guarantee that no other fan has. A few years ago, when I did the graphics for one of the rides at the Star Trek Experience in Las Vegas, Paramount supplied me with some of the graphics that had been used on the series. So as soon as I had the opportunity, I made a montage of a lot of the graphical images that I had, blew it up on a giant 5-foot-long poster and framed it.
I think his enthusiasm for the show is really cute. It's a very boyish enthusiasm.
So I guess I'm what you might call a closet Trekkie. The most recent Starfleet outfit from the Star Trek movies, Deep Space Nine and Voyager tunic, Star Trek The Next Generation from season 3 onward, Captain Picard's red jacket that he wore in season 5, Star Trek 2 through 6 uniform, and of course an old style Star Trek outfit, Deep Space Nine baseball outfit, inclusive of a baseball cap.
If it wasn't for Star Trek in the first place, I may not even be alive right now.
I think the influence was it gave him hope because he had a real rough childhood.
Well, this is the house I grew up in. It's changed quite a bit. I was one of 4 kids, and there was an outhouse. We didn't have plumbing in the neighborhood, so there were outhouses everywhere. My mother was a working mother, single. One of my first memories is looking out those windows as a really small child over into this parking lot. This is where the gang fights would occur. The gangs from the other side of town would come in and meet with us, and they would actually have knife fights. At the time, it seemed like a normal life. You know, I didn't know. There were like haves and have-nots. That's my aunt's house. That's actually where I'd go into the living room and watch Star Trek with my cousins. There was a lot of people getting drunk and shooting guns and people getting killed. My cousin, who lived right on that street there, he was shot in the back of the head. Second cousin over there, he died of a drug overdose. My cousin up there was shot in the head. None of my friends really had a future. Another one had his throat slit and then shot 3 times. When he got killed, that was the last one of the kids I grew up with. They were all dead. When I started watching Star Trek, I was only like 8 years old, and I'd already started to think beyond this neighborhood.
Watching Star Trek gives him hope and enthusiasm, and I think it's got him to where he's willing to make changes and move on. So it's helped him out a lot.
My kids know very little about this. I don't talk about it much. So, actually, I'm probably going to get choked up. I have to cut if I talk about it too much. It's pretty emotional. So, I don't know. It's kind of along the lines of guys who go to war. They come back and they don't want to talk about it. You don't want to bring all that back. So, even with your closest loved ones. You don't want to share some things because, well, one, you don't want pity, but another, it's just kind of hard to talk about sometimes. Hope for mankind, hope for a better tomorrow, and that was what the message of the whole show was about.
I call myself a professional Trekkie. What this means is that I've done consultant work with Paramount's Viacom Consumer Products Division, working with their licensees.
They are CDs for the licensees, and they have descriptions of what the various products are and what the various characters are. So I had to write up like who Jean-Luc Picard was, a short history of that, the short history of the Enterprise, who the Klingons are.
I am most proud of the menu that I wrote for Quark's Bar and Restaurant of the Star Trek Experience in Las Vegas.
The onion rings were the holy rings of Beta Z, barbecue continuum pizza, hamburgers and cheeseburgers, and for those people who were interested in the fresh catch of the day, Fisherman's Wharf. I'm going over to Roddenberry Productions, also known as Roddenberry.com, to try to identify what's what. If this is from the 3rd season of Star Trek The Next Generation or the 4th season. Gene Roddenberry gave so much to fans, and to be able to work with his son and to kind of continue the Star Trek legacy, that means a lot to me.
We got some new stuff for you.
Wow. Oh, wow. This is stuff you were telling me about.
Roddenberry Productions really is an homage, actually, to Gene Roddenberry in a sense. It is a website that has merchandise and news and inside scoops regarding science fiction, Star Trek, and Roddenberry on it. And in addition to that, is really becoming a source for multimedia content, whether it be games or movies or television or merchandise.
Can I touch any of this stuff?
Yeah, feel free. A lot of them make noises and all the stuff that you want them to do.
Oh. Okay. I want this.
Jonathan is one of the very special people that we trust to know Star Trek better than we do.
That's a phaser sound. Phaser sound. That's not a phaser sound. Definitely a phaser sound. Phaser sound. Phaser sound.
I love coming to the Roddenberry warehouse. It's full of Star Trek stuff, and I love Star Trek stuff. And these are people who are keeping the dream alive in their own way, and I love being part of it.
So you're kind of mixing your eras here. If this were all Voyager, there wouldn't be any Eurostyle here. It would be Helvetica compressed over here.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's what you're here for.
Although I will
Tell
tell
us
you,
what's wrong.
I will tell you some interesting stuff though.
Hold on one
You
second.
got this.
We've got a problem with the tricorders. Thanks.
In a lot of ways, I am living the dream of a fan. It's been amazing because I've had opportunities to do things that a lot of fans haven't been able to do. I'm a very small cog in a very, very big machine. But I am a cog, and I like being that cog.
I've never worn the wig before. This ought to be exciting.
Put your hair in.
Oh, I forgot my ears.
What's your ears?
With Roy and I, even though I've never been a big fan, I've had a blast because he includes me with his Star Trek interest and conventions. And, well, our fan group, our club, has the largest one that I know of.
The USS Endeavour is a local Star Trek fan club located in Madison County. It's 103 members, so the largest local fan club in the world. We're a ship among many ships in Starfleet Command, which is the international fan club. We formed the Endeavour, and we told the kids about it and the grandkids, and they all wanted to join because it was just going to be so much fun. Didn't have anything to do with Star Trek, just it was going to be fun, and it has been ever since.
You really want me to be a Star Trek geek? And he's like, yeah, but it'll be fun. He's always been there my whole life for me, doing everything I like. And this is something he's always been interested in, and I'll do anything for him.
As a group, we're very active. We do fundraisers, we do parades, we have parties. We raise money for the Hopewell Center Client Council. We raise money for Highland High School Team Roboto in the past. We have cookouts. We work in festivals.
Tonight, we're having a fundraiser, which part of our group, that's what we like to do, is volunteer and raise funds. We've sold tickets for a goods chocolate event for 2 hours. We get to eat all the chocolate we want.
It's all you want, all you can eat for as long as you can take it.
And the proceeds from that will go to people with disabilities.
Thanks to Randy and Goods Chocolate and all of you, we were able to raise $510 for Hopewell Center Client Council. That's a lot of money.
The USS Angeles is a chapter of the international fan club called Starfleet, which has been around since 1974 and has 235 Star Trek chapters around the world. So later on today, a bunch of members of the USS Angeles are getting together to go to Vasquez Rocks, which is one of the most famous Star Trek filming locations.
Hey guys,
Hey, John, about time.
good to see you all.
John,
Hey Goldie.
Hi.
The idea here today, before we all freeze to death completely, is just to get some nice shots for the website. So thanks everybody for showing up in uniform.
Obviously, we all like Star Trek a lot, and to be able to, walk around these same locations where, our heroes were filmed doing, their Starfleet thing, it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's not like this place is Rapente, but if it'll make you guys feel better, I'll warm up the rocks.
Thank you.
We get each other's jokes. And of course, it's always nice to be able to pop in a movie and not have to try to figure out what you're going to go see. It's like, we're going to watch Star Trek.
I think if Star Trek wasn't part of our life, it would almost be like losing a family member.
Practically every aspect of my life is somehow involved with Star Trek. It's, like I said, it's my hobby. I take it to work with me. It's in my family, my home life. It's what I do for fun. It's what I do for work. Star Trek is, I'm all about that.
I can't see him ever losing his love of Star Trek. It's always going to be there.
What has given Star Trek its strength over the years is the optimism, is the hope that, we make it. We get through all the crap, and we're out there amongst the stars. We're discovering, we're exploring, we're making new friends. There's a lot of hope in Star Trek, and that's what really attracts me to it.